Thanks for tuning in to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the nutrients we've been tracking very closely on our farm the last few years has been boron, and we've learned a few lessons that we want to share with you on today's show.
Well, we're also going to talk about soybean aphid resistance. Unfortunately, there are a bunch of soybean aphids out there that just aren't dying anymore when we spray pyrethroid, so we're going to have to do something different. We'll talk about that today.
Well, it's too bad they have to feed on soybeans and not our weed of the week. That would be very helpful trying to get rid of this weed. We'll talk about it later in the show. But first, here's our farm basics.
These days, it can be hard to make the math work in your soybean fields. With the LibertyLink system with Liberty herbicide, it gets easier. A 2+ bushel per acre advantage over Asgrow Roundup Ready to Extend soybeans means at least $18 more an acre for you. Plus, lower system input costs and more complete weed control all adds up to at least $33 more an acre for your farm. That's smart math. Grow smart with BASF.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk a little about our Ag PhD winter workshops.
We like to do workshops with farmers across the country in the middle of the winter when we're all thinking about, hey, what are we going to do for next spring and what can we change to try to make more money and produce higher yields? And that's going to be most of the topics that we talk about, but we will talk about quite a few things this winter.
Well, at most of these workshops, we're going to, well, let's put it this way. Our main topic is 101 ways to cut expenses on the farm. I can come up with even more ways than that, and you might think, oh my goodness, 101 ways? Yep, you bet. We're gonna cover everything from drainage to fertility, from weed control to disease control. We've got a lot of different things that we will cover throughout the day, and it'll vary depending on where we're at in the country, because we will be in a number of different states in January and February. We would encourage you to go to agphd.com under the events tab, and you can check that out.
Brian's interested in cut, and that is important to keep expenses down, but I'm also interested in what things are we investing money into that are making us money, because we don't want to cut those things. So we've got a number of things that we've learned through our research program on our farm and working with farmers across the country and around the world that are actually really helping and taking yields forward. We're going to talk about some of those as well.
Now, we've got a few other workshops that we're doing just exclusively on our farm at the Ag PhD Field Day site. Now, we'll be inside, it'll be the middle of the winter, but at the Ag PhD Field Day site in the Morton Center there near Baltic, South Dakota. We would encourage you to check this out. Again, it's at agphd.com under the events tab. Please pre-register if you would. That helps us out so we have enough food, enough chairs, and enough agronomy books for everyone who shows up.
Well, if you happen to get a chance to come to one of these workshops, I'm sure you'll be happy that you did. It's time well spent. We're not giving a sales pitch for a certain product or something like that, like so many meetings that you may attend. It's just straight information to try to help you do better on your farm and attack some of the problems that we faced across the country this year. There were a lot of things when it comes to diseases and nutrient challenges, like we're going to talk about on today's program as well, that we're going to address this winter in detail and give you an action plan to take home.
Well, one of the things you'll want to consider if you want an action plan for better yields is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Morton is eager to make the building you've always dreamed of a reality. Visit us online at mortonbuildings.com.
No two seasons are the same. Each brings its own set of challenges, and you've seen a few. So many threats, and not one single thing can be taken for granted. In the fight against the unpredictable, the Acceleron portfolio provides coverage on 4 fronts: fungicides, insecticides, nematicides, and bioenhancers. Rise stronger with one simple decision.
There are 6,272,640 square inches in an acre. We counted. Why? Because we designed the TigerMate 255 field cultivator and 2000 series early riser planter to maximize every single one. So when you create the most level seedbed in the industry, and target a nickel-size area to plant a seed and never miss. You'll know in high-efficiency farming, there's one name to count on. Case IH. Rethink productivity. Learn more at caseih.com/everyinch.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
We're live on the red carpet, waiting for the next generation Credenz soybean. There he is.
Oh, Ed, look, it's Credenz LibertyLink GT27.
I know, Edna. He's got elite genetics.
You gotta love his 4 bushel per acre yield advantage.
And he's both Liberty and glyphosate herbicide tolerant.
Definitely the year's hottest performer. Ask your Credenz retailer about the new Credenz LibertyLink GT27 soybeans.
Grow smart with BASF. Always read and follow label directions.
We started utilizing the Dual React system this year. You can adjust your speed and it automatically adjusts your sprayer tips. So you can slow down and you aren't building up huge droplets, or you can speed up and you're not throwing a mist that's drifting.
Hypro, helping you spray better.
One of the micronutrients that you may not have applied recently on your farm is boron. That's our topic today.
It's probably one of the most misunderstood nutrients out there because everyone thinks, well, this can kill my crop and it's just going to leach away, so why waste my time putting it out there? And besides that, I only need it at pollination time.
Right. If you have too much boron, it is going to kill your crop. I agree with that, but you know what? Too much water kills your crop. Too much nitrogen kills your crop. Too much of anything kills your crop. The thing that you may not know is you could probably put several pounds of boron out on your ground if you have good calcium levels and high CEC. So don't get too worried about boron that it's going to hurt anything, but it absolutely can help if you have the right amount.
I've talked to a lot of farmers, Brian, that have talked to their fertilizer dealer who said, I won't put a pound of boron out on your ground. It's probably going to kill things. Well, how do you know if you don't try? Now, I'm not suggesting you try to kill all your crop, but what I'm saying is try out some of these things on a small amount of acres and just see in your area with your climate, with your soils, what's going to happen. Brian gave you a couple of clues there. Look at where your calcium levels are at in your soil. If you've got adequate calcium, you can handle a lot more things, but if you're short in calcium, then that could create some problems, and that would be a more important nutrient to get fixed first. The other thing is high cation exchange capacity soils. What we're talking about here is soils that have good holding capacity. Now, if you've got lots of organic matter and heavy high calcium or high cation exchange capacity soils, you've got potential to hold that boron in place so it isn't all available for your crop at the same time.
Now, Darren mentioned earlier that boron is important at pollination. Yes, with almost every crop, it is important in pollination, but it's important all the way through the crop too. Sure, the biggest peak demand might be at pollination, but you've got to have that there in place well in advance in some cases. So what a lot of really high yield farmers are doing is they're supplementing some boron by adding it foliar. The problem with that is it can get really expensive. So one of the ways we've used to cut our costs on our farm is applying dry boron, because in our area of the country we have heavy soils and very little rainfall. In other words, I'm not nearly as worried about leaching it out as I would be if, let's say, I got 40 or 60 inches of rain in a sandy soil. You just have to vary this depending on where you're at in the country or in the world and what your soil type and your rainfall is. What I'm getting at here is we are putting down a dry boron source in the fall, in the late fall, and we've put as much as 4.5 pounds per acre out there on our cation exchange capacities that are 15, 20, 25 with calcium levels of 65 to 80. Haven't had any problem with that. We absolutely have raised our parts per million on the soil test. And on our farm in the DTPA test, we were down to 0.2, 0.3 parts per million on boron. That's horrible. It's no wonder our tissue analysis was showing deficient. Well, once we started doing these applications, now we're up in the 1 to 2 range, which is pretty good. And ultimately on our farm, for big time yields, I'm shooting for 3 parts per million on a DTPA test.
Now, this is a broadcast type application that Brian's talking about here, and so often we get questions about banding. Well, what about this? Could I put it in furrow? Could I put it close to my seed? No, you can't. This is where you want to watch out with boron. You don't want to put a whole bunch in close proximity to the seed. That's where if you're putting on a decent amount of boron at the same time, spreading it out in a broadcast really adds to the safety of the product.
Once again, we strongly encourage you, soil test for boron, do plant tissue analysis for boron and see where you're at. And like Darren said, there's some trial and error to this. No one knows exactly what we should have in the soil or in the plant, but I will tell you, boron is important in all crops. You want to have a decent level, and to find out exactly what each crop uses in a given year, you can simply go to the Ag PhD Fertilizer Removal app, pull up your crop and your yield goal, and it will tell you how much in total boron you need.
One other thing you absolutely need is to control our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop it later in the show.
Commodity Classic is a great place to recharge your batteries, to reconnect with why you started farming in the first place, and why you can't imagine doing anything else. You'll be among thousands of farmers who share your thirst for knowledge and your passion for agriculture. Commodity Classic is a positive, uplifting, and inspiring environment, one that will keep you fired up when you head back home. Thursday, February 28th through Saturday, March 2nd in sunny Orlando, Florida. Visit CommodityClassic.com.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference, because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
Farmers across the country have put their confidence in the Roundup Ready Extend crop system. These are their experiences.
My level of confidence and satisfaction is high right now.
I am 100% satisfied with the XtendiMax with Vapor Grip technology.
The yield on the Extend soybeans, I feel very confident that those are the leading soybeans on the market.
It has worked 100% for us, so we're sticking 100% with it all the way right now.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
The buzz on this line is probably the best in 10 years, both in soil and in the plant. Joe, you've been doing this for a while. What's your take?
Well, Don, you take a player like High Energy N, 3 forms of nitrogen, plus sulfur and iron, with slow release technology, he's making plays all season long.
Oh, look at his numbers. He's getting it done.
But don't forget about in response. This guy's designed for a quick release nitrogen.
It's looking like another championship season for Agro Liquid.
Over the last 15 years, soybean aphids have been absolutely terrible most years in the upper Midwest. We've sprayed on our farm just about every single year for 15 years. Well, when we talk about soybean aphids, we usually say, you know what, you can go out there for $2 an acre or less with a full rate of a great pyrethroid, and on our farm, that continues to work to this day. But there are some people who are unfortunately running into soybean aphid resistance. That's our topic today.
Well, when pyrethroids no longer work, what are the other options that you have? Predominantly, it's Lorsban. Well, if you have one option, how long is it until Lorsban quits working as well? We like to have multiple modes of action for any problem that we're going to have, so we can rotate or utilize 2 modes of action at once to do an even better job. And you see that with a lot of the pre-mixed products that are out on the market today. They're trying to pre-mix 2 different modes of action so they don't have a resistance problem. Well, it's already too late. There are aphids in Minnesota that are resistant to pyrethroids, and Lorsban right now has been the only option.
The other product that would be labeled is dimethoate. Now, not a lot of people use dimethoate. It's the same chemical family as Lorsban. So yes, it's an option, but it's not something people are regularly doing. Now, something we got super excited about just a few years ago was a new product called Transform from Corteva. With Transform, we could kill aphids without killing most of the beneficials out there. And yes, it would cost a little more money. It was about $6 versus $2 for the pyrethroid. But we thought, man, if we can kill the aphid without killing the beneficial insects, this is amazing. The problem was some environmental groups got after the EPA about this, that they needed to have more testing. and we're going, are you crazy? This is way safer, better for the environment, everything. So Transform briefly got pulled from the market. It's going to be back now for spring is what we're told. Okay, so that is absolutely an option, as well as the new Safina from BASF. Safina is a different mode of action from Transform, but it's very, very similar to Transform in that it's going to kill soybean aphids, not a lot of other insects, and it doesn't have much impact on beneficial insects.
Well, this is a big deal for farmers because now we could spray aphids a little bit sooner. Universities have encouraged us to wait until there are more aphids out there, just in case the beneficials were able to build up enough numbers to take care of them. But we've seen on the farm time after time, this just hasn't happened. It's very rare that the beneficials are going to stop the aphids in time before substantial yields are lost. So now with products that are safe for these beneficials, we could kill off the aphids early, still have beneficials left in the field for any future outbreaks.
Darren mentioned thresholds, and that's one of the things that absolutely has driven me crazy here over the last few years, because a lot of people are still using some antiquated thresholds like 250 aphids per plant. That's absolutely, I can promise you, wrong. 250 aphids at, let's say, an R1 or R2 stage in the soybeans is way too many. You're already losing a whole bunch of yield. So just like Darren said, yes, I think there's a big advantage to going to Safina or Transform if we don't have that impact on the beneficials. That'd be great, because that's what most people worry about, is killing those beneficials. But I just know this. Even if I have to kill some beneficials, which is unfortunate, I'm gonna have to do it if I have that many aphids out there. So a lot of times what we found is even if we have 25 or 50 aphids per plant, it's well worth it when we're spending $2 an acre and when we're making a trip out there already to control something else. The whole thing is, I literally had $2 of additional cost. Well, now, if I have to spend $6 for Transform, will that change my threshold? Of course it will, because now I'm spending more money. So I'm gonna have to bump up the threshold. It's still not gonna get to 250 just running the simple math based on today's economics, but I am saying it is going to raise the threshold a little bit versus what we've been running for the last 10 years.
One other reason here that the aphid control is so important, and we talk about resistance, and yes, we're worried about that. We don't want to let resistant bugs escape, but we're also worried about the disease impact that we're seeing in fields. When we get aphid outbreaks, we're seeing more disease problems. That plant has been opened up by thousands and thousands of tiny little wounds on the plant, and all of a sudden disease gets in. So when farmers are out spraying these insecticides, we're seeing good gains most cases, putting a fungicide with it, and the earlier we can treat, the quicker we can stop that disease before it ever gets started.
Now, a lot of people are excited about Transform, or they're excited about this new Safina, or in specialty crops, Safina is called Inscalis. I am too. I love the thought of, hey, I can kill the bug I want, and I leave everything else. But the problem that we run into is we very commonly also, in addition to aphids, have other bugs out there. We have spider mites, we have bean leaf beetles, we have grasshoppers, and a few other things. So I'm just trying to say we got to be really careful when we're scouting to look for all the bugs, and if we start making recommendations that it's going to be Safina or Transform, we may miss some other bugs, and now we have to make another trip. So what very well will happen in the future in these areas where we have aphid resistance is we'll see combinations of using the pyrethroid plus Transform or Safina.
Well, you're right, Brian, because the broad spectrum control we've gotten from the pyrethroids over the years has really reduced the need for very specific scouting. We see enough aphids and we say, you know what, the pyrethroid's going to kill those other bugs. And you're right, we're gonna have to, just like with weed control, really focus on which exact species are out there and how many of them are there, and then determine what we're going to use for that treatment.
One last thing I'll say, when we talk about spider mites, you have to be very particular in which pyrethroid you get. It's only Brigade or Capture that is going to control spider mites, bifenthrin, and that really is kind of limited to the Midwest. There is a lot of resistance with spider mites in other areas of the country. So I'm just trying to say, again, make sure you scout, you understand what bug you have, and whether or not you have resistance to certain insecticides in your area.
When you're out there scouting, don't forget to look for our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to control it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher.
with unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our weed of the week is Jerusalem artichoke.
All right, Brian, before we get into this specific weed, I just want to talk about perennial weeds in general. So here we go. We got a perennial weed. You do some tillage through a spot where there's Jerusalem artichoke, and from those little chunks of tubers that are left, you get more Jerusalem artichokes.
Right.
And we just want to talk about that to begin with. Tillage is not your best option when you're dealing with perennials.
Absolutely not. So anytime you've got a patch of perennials on your farm, you want to leave those intact. Do not till them, spray them if you can, because now you can get to that entire root system. What ends up happening is if you cut that off, okay, there might be these little pieces of tubers below ground that will put shoots on and are still living, but you can't kill those with a lot of the herbicides because you don't come in contact with that because it's now separated from the above ground portions of the previous plant.
All right, so if you see Jerusalem artichoke out in your fields, you can attack it in the fall with a 2,4-D or a dicamba, but in crop there aren't as many options that are great. I like Roundup because it is a perennial, because it can get down into that root system, but you have to use a strong rate to take the weed out completely.
So yeah, I'm with you, Darren. We've got to have a good strong rate of Roundup, but the whole thing is people talk all the time about fall. Oh, I'm going to go spray in the fall and it's going to work great. It will if you spray before your first hard frost. If it's after the first hard frost, it's hard for the plant to bring the Roundup in. It's hard for the plant to translocate or move the Roundup to all the growing points. You either need to really up the dose of Roundup or just simply wait until spring and try again. Or, of course, you could switch to dicamba or 2,4-D and at least burn off the top growth really well, hope that winter kill kills the rest of the plant, and go from there.
I would certainly use crop rotation to my advantage. I really like extend crops and enlist crops because you have that option of 2,4-D or dicamba in crop. I also like Roundup Ready crops if you're using a strong rate of Roundup to take it out. Then watch your fence lines. Utilize something like Freelex, which is the new 2,4-D choline, which doesn't have the volatility of the old amines or esters.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Commodity Classic is an early adopter's paradise. This is where what's next happens, where you can meet the people who are changing the way you farm. From the jaw-dropping trade show to outstanding educational sessions to one-on-one conversations with other farmers from across the nation, you'll be among the first to experience the new ideas, innovations, and technology that can help your operation stay profitable in times of challenge and change. Be in Orlando February 28th through March 2nd at the 2019 Commodity Classic. Visit commodityclassic.com.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
At Estes Performance Concaves, we know how valuable your time is at harvest. That's why we designed the new XPR concave system. The XPR system is the #1 performance concave system on the market, surpassing the rest in both speed and efficiency, ensuring every last grain from your field gets into your tank. Plus, XPR concaves work for all row crops. No more changing concaves, meaning you have less downtime. Take back your bushels this harvest. Get Estes Performance Concaves in your combine today.
And how about the big man, Pro Germinator?
Yeah, this guy's got some experience in the field. But look at his stats. You can't argue with those kind of results.
You're right. I know a lot of teams wishing their phosphorus player had those kind of numbers.
Right, but this guy's not just phosphorus. He's got the nitrogen, the potassium, the micros. All those just add up to his phosphorus game.
And his game is good.
The future. Does thinking about it fill you with fear and doubt? Do you try to second-guess the grain markets just to keep your farm operating, or do you have a plan? At Swenson Investments and Commodities, we recognize that finances for every farm are unique and input costs and break-evens can vary dramatically from field to field. Swenson's grain marketing specialists examine your farm's break-even on every acre and create a plan to help you sell at profitable levels. Take the emotion out of your grain marketing. Call Swenson's grain marketing specialists today.
This agro-liquid line is something special. A lot of really impressive playmakers. Take a look at Sure K. This guy is an enigma.
But wrap your head around the exceptionally high plant response when compared to conventional potassium sources, the research-proven plant availability, plus flexible application options and mixing capabilities.
Really stellar performance stats. Sure K is a true standout, and that's a winning goal on any field.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
There are 6,272,640 square inches in an acre. We counted. Why? Because we designed the TigerMate 255 field cultivator and 2000 series early riser planter to maximize every single one. So when you create the most level seedbed in the industry and target a nickel-size area to plant a seed and never miss, you'll know in high-efficiency farming, there's one name to count on. Case IH. Rethink productivity. Learn more at caseih.com/everyinch.
Down corn is frustrating to combine and creates some issues even after harvest. I'll discuss why it happened and what to do in today's Iron Talk. If you had some corn go down this year and possibly drop ears, that's a tough situation. Now you've got to prep that field for the next crop and make some plans to avoid it happening again. Here are a few observations from downed corn this fall. Long stalks laying every which way are a challenge for many types of operations. In our strip till, we even had a little challenge in fields the last couple of years where the tops fell off the corn. Now this is above the ears, so we didn't lose any yield, but we've got those long pieces of stalk compared to where our chopping corn head had sized everything up to just a few inches long, and it was a much more difficult situation. Coulter carts of various kinds or vertical tillage will do a nice job sizing that residue up so it flows through your next machine much better. Anthracnose stalk rot was really bad this year and impacted a broad geography. There were other stalk rots that also hit some growers. Crop rotation can lessen the blow to some degree, and picking a more tolerant hybrid is key as well, as there are quite a few now that have come out in the last couple of years with significantly improved anthracnose tolerance and tolerance to other diseases. We saw some stalk rots especially bad in areas that had excessive spring moisture, insufficient drainage tile, corn rootworm feeding, and especially with the anthracnose, in places where we had stressful conditions during and after pollination. Plant health throughout the season is important to build tolerance to all plant diseases. In some cases, there are other causes for lodging and eardrop that have to be addressed. Planting population may have been too high for the fertility levels in your field. If your yield per 1,000 seeds planted is less than 7, then you likely overplanted. Make adjustments to your fertility program and planting populations going into next year to avoid a similar fate. Down corn is a really bad deal. If there's still time to clean things up this fall, vertical tillage could be a big help. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
We hope you've enjoyed our show today. If you've got any questions for us, we'd love to take those questions during our Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us each weekday on SiriusXM Channel 147.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.